Okay, welcome. This is Awakening and Conscious Living podcast, and my name is Bill Poutler.
And I'm Luisa. This is yet another one of those situations where I'm not great with the words. So I'll start sharing with, what I learned duality to mean. And duality, so it's the idea of separation, this perception that we have, which is a very human concept, I will say, because when it's not human, like when I'm not here in the 3D, I don't see it or experience it this way, but it's this very human concept that we are separated. So, for example, the idea of good and evil, the idea of light and dark, the idea of pleasure versus pain. She mentioned a little bit in one of our last episodes, like the yin and yang, and that image came up as I was thinking about this because I feel like that's the way that we visualize it in the world is this concept of separation. And I think what it does in this 3D world, it creates a lot of what we're seeing in this country, at least right now. A lot of the division, a lot of the separation, a lot of you and them, a lot of those ideas that really don't serve us as humans. And they certainly don't serve us as souls. And right along the lines of, what is duality? Non-duality is the complete opposite. It's the idea and this beautiful feeling that there is no other way to explain other than to experience it where we are all one. And the first time I experienced it, I'll share this. It was in astral traveling, I think that's what it's called, like where I got to visualize and like see just the universe and just existing in that space where I was everything and nothing, and I think that's why I love meditation so much, is because I feel like I get a glimpse of that if I get into a really deep meditative state of non-duality is we are one. So the pain that, someone in Africa may feel affects me because we are ultimately all one. So what is your perception on this, Bill?
I think we need to start with the concept of non duality and duality. And you have to look at the words, okay? Because dual means two, right?
Mhm.
Love, fear, you know, light, dark, longing, absence. Um, and non duality means one. So you just got to remember those words, duality and non duality, are very important because one means one and one means two. And this is old Alan Watts stuff. And really, you can go back through all the religious text throughout the history of mankind. And it's the story of the Garden of Eden, which I've talked about before. But God is consciousness. So what can you experience inside of consciousness?
Everything.
Everything or nothing, right?
Yep.
Okay. What consciousness does so it can experience its full dimensions is it separates itself from consciousness, right?
Expressions
So
of the divine.
we choose to leave consciousness per se and come into a world of duality. Okay.
Okay.
And inside that world of duality, we get to experience those extremes. We get to experience pain and we get to experience deep love. Okay. And you can't experience all that at that level just inside of consciousness because consciousness is equivalent to the Garden of Eden where everything's perfect. Right. So that's what the Garden of Eden story is. It's God going, don't eat this apple tree or you're going to know everything. And knowing everything's not easy. That's what duality is and non-duality is. And it's great when we're on this earth and we can, and I've never astro projected. We're gonna have to talk about that at some point in time and talk about your awakening experience, which we haven't talked about yet. I'll jump to another thing. And think about this. It's our bodies, okay, that separate us from reality or from all of consciousness. It's our limitation of our being on this earth and being in these biological bodies. That is literally the separator between us and all of consciousness. And so we
Yes,
chose to do this.
we did.
So the key in all this is to recognize that we have chosen this duality. I mean, think about this. I mean, what makes you do your finger like that? I think we talked about that. Your
Like your
spirit does that, right?
mhm,
Your
mhm.
spirit says, make your finger move. That spirit tells your brain that. Your
Mhm.
brain sends the electrical signal here, and that happens. So see this, we're all spirit all the time, and it's our brains that that translate all this into our body, and allow us to do things. But think, this is duality. Touch your fingers together, okay? You can feel yourself, right?
Yeah,
What if you do this? You don't feel anything.
right.
That's non-duality, okay?
And to talk about that astral projection, I experienced it quite a bit at the beginning of my awakening. And to this point about you doing this and you don't feel anything. So, astral projection, as far as I understand it, and I know that there are depths to this, and I've never gone into depths. I've just experienced it firsthand, and this is what this is from. It usually happens when you're in REM sleep. So it's like your deepest sleep. And then you are out in the cosmos. You are out exploring in the universe, resting, depending on how you look at it, right? So I was in REM sleep and it's happened a few times, but the most memorable one, which is probably why Google told me that I was, schizophrenic, and that's okay because this does sound absolutely insane. I totally get what I'm about to say. It sounds crazy. Um, so I was out and I was sitting on Saturn, on the ring of Saturn,
Wow.
and I was with someone. I was with another soul, and I recognized that soul. I've spent many lifetimes with that soul. And that soul was sitting there, and we were just sitting there. We were just sitting there and we were climbing whatever planet is next to that. I have no idea, next to Saturn, because I was on Saturn's ring. And then I was like climbing onto the next planet with the other person, but I couldn't feel anything. Like somebody asked me when I shared this experience, like, what did it feel like? And it felt like everything and it felt like nothing. It felt so beautiful. And I felt at absolute, I want to say peace because it's probably the closest thing that I can give words to, but it is that same feeling that you have in meditation when you, like I said, when you get into a really deep state where you are just existing. And I
Mhm,
was just observing.
mhm.
And I could just see all of the other souls, and I could see the universe, and I could see everything, but there was no judgment. The
Right.
person that I was with, the other soul that I've spent many lifetimes with, is a soul that in this lifetime has not been a positive experience for me. So,
Wow.
but in that astral projection, I did not feel anything toward that soul, not positive, not negative. We just existed. And I got to experience that moment with that soul. And that is like the perfect description of what non duality has felt like for me. Able to visualize that and know this thing that we often talk about. And I say it a lot like, oh, the universe. I feel it feels really privileged for me to have experienced that. And I do believe that a lot more of us experience it. But I think it has a lot to do with the words and the fact that we're not all willing to go on YouTube and sound crazy because because it does sound crazy, but I do know plenty of people who have experienced it, differently than I have, but it is something we are all able to do. And that feeling of non-duality, um, I think, it's hard for us as humans to live beyond the duality and live in a non-duality because I do believe that there needs to be a higher consciousness. You need to understand and look beyond and shed. I want to say transmute. I don't love the word shed. Transmute all of the things that were given to us, all of the truths that were told to us as to be true without, without it coming from our core. You need to be spiritually awakened. You need to understand that there's life beyond what's in front of you, that there's more to what we live in our day to day, that there's more to this 3D life, that you are a soul having a human experience. I think that's why it's hard for us as humans to get to that point of living in non duality. And, we mentioned before, it's not that we're like advanced or anything, we're just sharing our experience. But even for me, with the level of awareness that I have and the experience that I have, I can't say that I operate on a day to day in non duality. In the day to day, do I in general have that perception? Like I have that awareness. I know that. But is every action that I take with that awareness, like front, like in the front of my mind? It is not. I think that takes time, experience, and consciously choosing to operate out of that. I feel like I see that in you a lot more.
Well, thank you, I guess. Uh, and and we are talking about conscious living, right? Okay. And so uh, that's important to live consciously. But I do want to talk about when you say living in duality or non duality, um, I want some clarifications here. Okay. I mean, we are living in duality.
Mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
We are all living in duality. If I pick up a knife and slice my finger, that MF is going to bleed, right?
mhm.
So that's very much duality. Um, but well, I've got notes on this here real quick. Because, well, this kind of goes back to some other stuff, but um, duality is how consciousness learns what it feels like to be limited. Okay.
Mm.
Um, but here's what I want to say about non duality. Non duality is not the absence of duality. Okay. It doesn't erase the world, it doesn't make pain vanish. Okay. Duality is how non duality plays.
Duality is how non-duality plays. Oh,
See? Isn't that pretty?
that's beautiful.
Because if we're not just like you out sitting on Saturn, you couldn't feel anything, right?
Yeah,
And so uh, we're a little like children in a sandbox, you know, and we're just playing in the sand.
yeah.
And as long as you know that that's what you're doing, okay, then that's fine.
And I think that brings up something that, I hear a lot, and I think this is the first time it's clicked once you've said that, is there's this big focus on, like in the mental health space, about healing your inner child. That's
Well,
the term that's
yeah,
used
in
often.
your child.
For a while, I understood it when I started shedding, like, and like transmuting my own pain and my own wounds from childhood. But the way that you just said it, it clicks on a deeper level, because that means that in order for us to exist in this 3D lens, in this 3D world, and to be able to enjoy it by experiencing it, if we use the word enjoy as in experiencing it,
Yes.
then that means that we need to come from that place of our inner child. Children are playful, right? They're not overly focused with outcomes. They're not overly focused with right or wrong. They just live from their truth. They say whatever feels true to them. They go and do and play with and say hi to strangers, and, we'll sit on a stranger's lap and we'll eat with, you know what I mean? So, in order for us to have the best human experience, um, then that means that we need to have our inner child needs to be healed, if we're talking about it from like a mental health, everyday living perspective, because then that means that your non-duality is actually getting the most out of this duality that we exist in.
Yeah. Because, well, a couple things. Jesus said, be like children. Okay. He didn't say be a childlike, which is different. He said be like children.
What moments help us touch non-dual awareness?
What moments help us touch non dual awareness? Oh, I'll tell you. Now I remember what I was going to say.
Perfect.
Which maybe answers this question a little bit. I mean, anytime I talk about this a lot, anytime you have pain, anytime you are suffering, okay, not physically, but it can be physical too. You obviously have physical pain. Um, but anytime you're suffering, you're operating out of duality because you're you're identifying with the suffering. And there's lots of examples. I'm running for the elevator. The person on the elevator sees that I'm running for the elevator, and then they don't hold the door,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you can go F them, blah, blah, okay. Or you can go, oh, well, love them. Maybe they didn't see me. Maybe, no, they obviously saw me, but they chose not to. And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
So in one case, you are suffering and you're creating your own suffering. Okay. In the other case, you've chosen not to create suffering. And that is just a learned conscious living perspective, right?
Yes, and in one case, you were conscious about the fact that that person made a choice that was maybe you didn't even think about what that choice, but that person made a choice, and you are choosing to consciously, with awareness, not look at the choice that person made in a that it came from malicious intent.
Right.
And in the other scenario, you are choosing to look at it as that person made a choice and immediately attached to it that negative thought form and consciously decide that it was something negative without knowing
That's
what it
right.
actually was.
Maybe they had an emergency. Maybe they're about ready to pee in their pants. I mean, who
You
knows?
don't know.
We
You
don't.
really don't know.
We don't know.
You don't know.
Maybe they were wound up about something and they just needed a minute on the elevator by themselves. I mean, it
Yeah.
could be a thousand things, but we attach, you know, oh, they hurt me. They did this. They did that. And none of us, I mean, we're all, uh, I've said this a lot of times and I can't remember it. We're all doing the best we can
Yeah.
from our given perspective at any given moment.
Yeah.
Okay. And, my growth in consciousness from 3 days ago to today, I'm a different person. And the more we grow, then the more we change the perspective of how we look at things. And the more conscious we become, the more we operate out of a non dual experience in a dual world.
Yeah. And that brings me back to what you mentioned earlier about, how the divine how the divine consciousness experiences itself. My belief is that, I am an expression of the divine. So in essence, I am like a child of God and all the different words that we can use, right?
Sure.
So I am an expression of the divine. The divine created me so that it could express itself in all possible forms. And I believe that every single human being, every soul is part created by the divine for that purpose of the divine experiencing itself in every possible, as much as possible, in all the extremes and in all the ways. And what that means is that the power of what we make of this world, of our lives, our 3D lives, of our duality, of our real 3D experience for each one of us is in our hands individually and it is in our hands collectively.
Mhm.
So, how powerful understanding and consciously living and choosing to live in non duality is, it is unlimited because we are creating in this 3D world the reality, of the experience that we came and were sent here, however you choose to look at it, or chose to come here from the divine to express. So when we talk about power, and again, not to get political, but with like everything happening in this country, when I see crowds and crowds of people choosing to go out and support one cause. What that means to me is those people are living in a non duality, understand, not all of them, but to an extent, big picture generalizing, understand the power of non duality because they understand how powerful each and every single one of us is. And then putting all of that energy together toward that one thing, the mass change that we can make energetically. I'm speaking energetically, not in any other
Right.
way.
Right.
But, I think that in a day-to-day basis in choosing how we live our lives, non-duality, living in non-duality and having that consciousness may seem so small, like that scenario, the elevator scenario that you talked about for us, right? It seems so small, almost insignificant, maybe like 3 to 5 minutes of your day, right?
Mhm,
But how imagine each and every single one of us chose to take that scenario and go with the negative thoughts.
mhm,
And then imagine if every single one of us in that same scenario chose to go with the positive thoughts
mhm,
or the reality of the fact that we don't know what's going on, so at least not assigning the negative thoughts.
mhm.
When you think about thought forms are these whatever ideas that we create in our mind and then the energy that we give it, right? So
Yep,
that means that if each and every single one of us chose to inject that positive or that neutral energy into that elevator situation, we change the narrative of what that looks like moving forward. We change the narrative of what that feels like moving forward. We change the narrative of how we experience that each and every day. So that moment that's so small that maybe is 3 to 5 what may look like insignificant moments of Bill's life can have a major impact in the collective energetically if we choose to be conscious about the fact that, we are souls having a human experience, that we are expressions of the divine, that we are here and we have so much power over what our world looks like individually and collectively that we can make it whatever we want to make it. And I think we've seen the worst of what we can make it and and perhaps we start
maybe.
choosing to make it something different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably the goal of all religions in their most pure form is to bring about love and goodness. And people need to remember that everything in this world, every single rule is all made up. We've made up this whole thing, every bit of it. And in some ways that's terrifying. In some ways it's very beautiful. But when the system breaks down and it's not serving the whole, then it's natural for the system to revolt or whatever. And, the United States was built on revolution. So we're
Yeah.
all thieves and thugs from Europe. Um, but, uh, but that's good. That's fine too. But just because you're out, protesting doesn't mean that you have a non duality aspect.
Right. Right. Because you could be out protesting for so many different reasons, just like the elevator scenario, right? For a lot of reasons that we don't know.
Right. And you could even say, if you're doing it in anger, is that,
Mm.
is that non-dual? Um, and then you can go down the road of every relationship that both of us, all of us have been in some way, if we've been paying attention, has made us better. And most of the time, it's made us better through friction,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
so that's why we came from the Saturn ring into the world for the friction, right?
Yeah.
And so once you kind of get to the non dual perspective, then you look at the friction and you can choose whether you want to change. You can choose whether you want to interact. My thing would always be never to react, but just to choose your actions.
And the friction, so I someone said something about friction, so I'm gonna try to remember and I hope I don't butcher it. But they said, "When I come upon friction," it is the way that they look at it is that they're gonna go through it. So, whenever there's friction, if there's a path for them that has friction, and there's a path for them that's just like the easy flowing path, they always choose to go through with the friction. They understand friction to mean that there's something for them to learn, through that path, and so that's the path that they take. And it's so beautiful and important when you're choosing to live consciously because it's the reminder that you are here. I'll do it in my words. It means to me that you're choosing to go through the lessons and the experiences that your soul chose to come here to experience.
There you go.
Then, does that mean that that experience is gonna be all flowers and roses? Highly unlikely. Highly
Mm,
unlikely is the truth. But that also means that you are getting to that point of understanding your non-dual experience, like understanding that you are here to experience non-duality as you live in this very duality real world that creates, the judgment, the conflict, and the division that we live in. But when you go through that, when your soul goes through that experience in your human body, you're getting closer to, what your soul came here to experience, which means you're getting closer to being, your divine self, getting closer to that connection to source, that connection to your divinity.
yes. I would yes. I would say this though about I wanna go back to what you were saying about friction
Yes.
and choosing to go through friction. I believe that you definitely need to go through friction, but there's a point in time where where you just step back and you go, "Yeah, I'm not doing that friction anymore. I got that."
So that's where I am right now. It feels like I've spent the last 37 years mostly honestly, like, if we add it all up, it's probably been 34 years of friction and, like, 3 years of non-friction, like, it's been real. It's been a journey for sure, and I am at that place where in so many aspects of life, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not going down that road. Like, if there's friction, I'm like, and the human construct that I've applied to it, to put it in those words, is that is more of what may actually sound like spiritual bypassing, but it's not coming from that place. It's more of like, I'm not going through that friction. I'm going to sit back, live in my truth, choose whatever feels true for me, and let whatever needs to happen fall where it may. So I'm not pushing it, I'm not pulling it. I am choosing, making choices, taking actions that feel in alignment for me and not choosing to go be like, "Oh, I'm going to go fight that. I'm going to make sure that happens. I'm going to go get that regardless of whatever it is." I'll give an example like for me and I think I've talked about this before. The decision to go to law school for me. There was one thing if you ever asked me my whole childhood, one thing I knew, like one career, there was one title I knew. It was like I want to be a lawyer. That was the one thing that I knew. So then it comes time to go to law school. I'm at a place in my life where I can finally like where I felt like I could finally go to law school. And there was so much friction at that time in my life against that. And it was this decision about whether or not I would do it. And I decided to go through the friction and go to law school.
Mhm.
So I don't do that anymore. I'm like, I was thinking I wanted my PhD as well. And I was like, okay, maybe it's time. And then I was like, no, it is not. There is no reason to go through that friction. There is no reason to fight that. There is nothing for me that getting my PhD at this time, I'm going to say that, um, that getting my PhD is going to fulfill at a soul level for me. What it is fulfilling right now is my ego. Like it would make me feel good to have that little doctor title before my name.
Sure.
But and that's an example of choosing to go through the friction or choosing to not go through the friction. I am not going through the friction because there is no benefit in my heart that I would get from doing that at this time.
Non-duality is a identity shift, okay?
Mm.
Um, before in the dual world, I say I'm a person having an experience, okay? In the non-dual world, I say I'm awareness appearing as a person having an experience. Then awakening doesn't end suffering, it just changes ownership. And so in duality, we say the pain's happening to me. In non duality, we say pain is happening and I'm the space that it happens in. So, just think about it. I mean, I'm consciousness in this body. I'm experiencing some type of suffering. It's just like a cloud. Clouds come in, they go out. You can watch all the stuff flow in front of you, and you can be engaged and yet not be engaged. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes me think of, like, that thought form. When I think of thought forms, I think of clouds. It's how I envision them.
Yeah,
So you can see the pain, understand that it is not you, it's not who you are. It's
exactly.
something that you are seeing, and you get to engage with it to whatever level or depth you choose to, but you don't have to.
Yeah. And I mean, we all create our experiences. We create our whole lives.
Do you believe in a very 3D question, sort of, do you believe that to live consciously, right, in awareness of non-duality and duality, that there are times when you have to go against the systems? And I'm gonna leave it at that and just without going into depth.
That you have to go against the system.
The against the systems. So against the systems you mentioned earlier, how we've created everything. So we've created the systems that we exist under, the government, we've created the police department. Do you believe that sometimes as a soul having a human experience, with the awareness of duality and non-duality, that there are times when a soul or souls or whatever may feel like they may need to go against those same systems that we've, as humanity, have put into place.
If that's what your soul's called to do. I mean, you can take Martin Luther King Jr., right?
Yeah.
And you can take Malcolm X. They both beautiful rebels, one trying to change the system through awareness and more passivity, and one trying to change the system, but when meeting with resistance, believed, obviously, this is Malcolm X, believed that you had to meet resistance with resistance. If there was violence done to you, then you respond with violence. And that is, if we're a body, okay, that's just like, red blood cells fighting an infection, right? So, but is everybody called to that? No, you know, and if you understand that you're called to it and you understand why you're doing it and you believe that it's promoting health into the system, then you should do it, or you can be a Mother Teresa
Mhm.
and just serve people in a very quiet and loving manner. So it all depends on what your soul came in to learn.
Yeah. And I think there's room for all of it. I think it's important to remember so that we don't judge,
Yeah,
that there is room for all of it. Everybody's calling here is different and serves a purpose. And even though we may not see it,
that's right.
right? Even though we may not see it, understand it, like it does not mean that it's for us to determine whether it's right or wrong. It is their judgment to make, each and every single one of us. Our souls come here with a purpose. We sign up for this experience. I have a hard time understanding that I signed up for this experience.
Um, just remember when you're on the Saturn ring, you couldn't feel anything. Um,
Yeah, that's probably why I made all those choices there.
but it's hard to grow without resistance,
Yeah.
right? And so you have to remember that too, that even maybe the difficult political leaders and the different people we see in the news that do things that we don't think are right. I mean, that ultimately they make the system stronger.
They are bringing about things that we weren't aware of, that we were not paying attention to before necessarily,
Exactly.
you know? And there's this level of unity that has happened over the things that some of those leaders are doing and over some of those decisions that are being made for us as a collective, that the rest of us are like, no, no, no. And creating these beautiful connections that wouldn't have happened without those people's actions that we don't necessarily maybe don't like. So that is what I say from a certain space, like from the heart space. It is not for us to judge, even if we don't understand or like it, if it doesn't feel good. I don't love these words, but I'm going to say it. You can choose to focus on what good is coming out of it,
Mhm.
or you can choose to focus on it, on the negative of it. But if we choose to focus on the good that's coming out of it, existing in that non-duality becomes a beautiful thing because of what it's brought about.
Yeah, and I think this non-duality thing, when you start looking at judgment, we're pretty judgy. All of us are.
Yes.
And when you get to a point of non-judgment, you're getting to a point of understanding how to operate from a perspective or an experience of non-duality, you know, because people are so quick to go, this is right, this is wrong.
Mm.
That person's right, that person's wrong. And when we're judging, we're making those judgments out of our heart and we judge ourselves in the same way.
Ooh, that's like a whole other episode right there. But yes, yes, I have this thing where when I start to judge someone, I make myself process why I'm judging them. What within me, what wounds
Yes.
or what pain or what experiences within me are causing me to judge that person that way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's perfect. You get that level of awareness, um, then you'll stop judging yourself and then you'll stop judging others.
Yeah,
And it really all starts with ourselves.
yeah, yeah. And living consciously, it is that. It is living consciously, awakening to your truth, awakening to the fact that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, that you're a soul having a human experience. But it is a beautiful thing and it does take work. And also, I think it's important to say, don't judge yourself through this process either, because it can be really easy. As you are now aware and as you begin to walk down this path of shedding and transmuting these parts of yourself, it is very easy to sit there and be like, why can't I be like this person? Or why am I not at that level where I don't judge people? Or why am I not there? There are so many things that we have to undo that were told to us that we just accepted as truth, that that process is going to look different for everyone. And as long as you are beginning to be aware and as long as you are taking the steps and putting in the work and being in the silence, you are going to you're going to walk your path. There is nowhere to get to. You're going to walk your path. This is a journey. And but remember, this process isn't about that. That's not what your soul came here to experience.
Yes. And I think the most important things is as people are walking down the spiritual path, we all fall into this trap is, am I enlightened? When am I going to be enlightened? All that type of stuff. And so pay attention to that just with awareness. I used to like, oh, I can't wait till I get enlightened. And I don't know where, I've talked about my definition of enlightenment is just allowing the light that's in us, uh, letting it come through. Um, but I no longer think about really whether I'm enlightened or not enlightened. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So
I
I have a
love that.
couple other little things here I wanted to read real quick. And we talked about this, but I thought that the wording on this was nice. Suffering isn't pain, it's resistance combined with identity. So you think about that a little bit. Um, And we must honor duality to function as a human, but we also must realize non-duality to be free as awareness. Website, you can send me anything on my website, awakeningtoourselves.com. Can buy my book at atobook.com, which takes you to Amazon. And but if you go to awakeningtoourselves.com, there's a place in there where you can put any questions to me and it'll email me.
Yeah, so send in any questions. We will add Bill's link to his website where you can send any questions and also to buy his book. If you want to grab a copy of Awakening to Ourselves by Bill Potler, very own, feel free to reach out. Feel free to go on the links that you will find in the show notes and in the descriptions. And until next time.
And as soon as we can figure it out, we're going to start doing some live sessions. So if y'all
Yeah.
want to interact with us.
Yes, we are. We are going to be doing some live sessions soon.